I'm Mark Small. This is Civil Discourse Now. It is September 16th, 2022. It was my great honor and pleasure to speak with people in front of the governor's mansion yesterday. September 15th was the first day on which Indiana's horrible abortion statute took effect. After I spoke, a couple of people were upset that a Republican had been allowed to speak. And then there were comments that were made on Facebook in regard to the video that was posted there by folks who had sponsored and organized the event in front of the mansion. Those misgivings were legit. I'm a member of the Republican Party. I'm primary qualified and a Republican in good standing. Now, their question was, what was I trying to do? Infiltrate the Republican Party? No. That occurred 10, 15 years ago. Realize this, it wasn't too long ago that Richard Lugar received an F from the NRA for his position on guns. He believed in gun control, gun safety. I don't think he went as far as I would do on guns, but well, we weren't faced with some of the problems we have today because of guns. The Republican Party started in 1854 in response to slavery. Now, because history doesn't boil itself down to a 30-second soundbite easily, nor does the Civil War, you have to realize that the Republican Party wasn't strictly an abolitionist party. There are people who were abolitionists in the party. There are also people who argued that slavery shouldn't be expanded beyond where it was. That was a big argument at the time. Fortunately, people who were abolitionists won out. After the Civil War, the Republican Party also stood for making progressive reforms to our economic system. By the time 1890s, early 1900s, the Republican Party made strides on fighting monopolies, Theodore Roosevelt, fighting for the environment, Theodore Roosevelt, arguing that we should have estate taxes, Theodore Roosevelt. There were progressive Republicans all the way through the 20th century. Robert La Follette from Wisconsin. People strove to have civil rights recognized and realized that the Democratic Party, from the end of the Civil War until about 1964, was recognized as protecting the solid South, because the solid South meant those votes were going for the Democratic Party. Not a very pleasant part of our history, because what happened in 1964 was, after, by the way, Republicans had argued for civil rights. There'd be people who disagreed with it, but they were arguing for it too. In 1964, when Barry Goldwater ran for president, he got some of those states to vote for him. He calved off part of that solid South. And so people in the Republican Party started thinking, well, we can take a more aggressive approach towards what? Pandering to racists? That's what they did, especially after George Wallace showed how successful that could be in 1968. And so late 70s, early 80s, Lee Atwater was kind of trying to craft a Southern strategy for the Republican Party. Now, that meant you don't say racial expletives, say things like busing. I mean, same thing. The bottom line is racism wins out. And we can't let that happen. We can't let one party stand for racism, bigotry, ignorance. Now, when somebody said, well, he's just trying to come over from, and infiltrate the Republican Party somehow, no. You need to understand that the Republican Party, as it was transformed here in Indiana, 2006, 2007, James Bopp, attorney in Terre Haute, signed off on the Articles of Incorporation. those articles of incorporation created a not-for-profit corporation, not surprising, have to have some kind of business entity or corporate entity, some kind of entity to do business. The party isn't going to be a sole proprietorship, at least not yet. Not going to be a partnership, so you have a corporation. Well, in the Republican Party, it's going to be a for-profit corporation. Chuckle at that. This is not for profit. That means that there aren't any shares. That means, how do you take over that party? I guess we could look at the Articles of Incorporation. They give no hint. The rules. There you go, the rules. They might give a hint. Now, the Articles of Incorporation, the rules say the Republican State Committee, which is actually the entity that was incorporated, is the supreme authority of the party. I don't recall ever seeing anybody declare a party having a supreme authority. But the rules also refer to bylaws, and bylaws are not published. Not where I've seen them, and that's a problem. Because if you have an entity that can't be taken over by voters, that controls half of the governmental system, and it's one of the two major political parties, that's something that shouldn't be allowed. Political parties should be answerable to the voters. So that's one thing I think we have to change. Now, looking at what the comments were and how someone said their beloved Representative Ed Delaney. I've said before, I agree with Representative Delaney on a lot of the issues. I disagree with him on some of them. I think that he doesn't go far enough on some issues, particularly, I'd say, on ecology. I think we should set a goal of having water in this state clean enough to drink, just where you can put a cup in it within 5 years. Well, that's stupid. They'd never be able to do it. Well, we don't have a goal for it now, so I think it's better than nothing. I also think we should look at how we address gun violence. And we have to really look at putting whatever restrictions and limits we can on guns. I don't own a firearm. I think it's a good first step to oppose gun violence. Don't own a gun. We should have some kind of limit on the number of guns. How can somebody justify owning 200 firearms unless they're willing to arm an army? And even Justice Scalia said in the Heller case that the Second Amendment doesn't stand for the proposition of being able to own any firearms for any reason at any time. So that's who I am. I will put out more of my platform. I had printed it out in February on my website, Civil Discourse Now. I'll put more of it out so people can read it. I feel I need to address the folks who express these misgivings, as well they should. They don't know who I am. So people need to learn who I am. Mark Small. I'm running for Indiana House Representatives, District 86. I'm a Republican. I'm pro-choice. Roe versus Wade was written by a nominee of a Republican president to the Supreme Court. I'm pro-environment. EPA came into effect under a Republican president. I'm anti-gun. Republican presidents were in favor of gun control. And I'm in favor of protecting voting rights. And the bastards that have taken over this iteration of the Republican Party certainly don't want us to have the right to vote. Thank you.